puddle of oil inside the intercooler. As you guys might have remembered from when I first took this car out for its test drive, there was some oil that was coming out through the intercooler piping. Therefore, today's objective is to figure out exactly what's wrong and where all that oil is coming from, if it's just excessive blow-by from the engine, or if it's possibly a turbo seal that's gone bad. The first thing on my to-do list is to compression check the engine, so I'm gonna have to take off the crossover pipe, all the ignition coils, spark plugs, and then I'll go all the way through the lineup and see what the compression's at. I'm slightly scared by the results because, you know, it's kind of very easy to just ignore it and be like, yeah, now that the engine's running good, and not see that, you know, it's completely low on compression. But, oh well, we'll find out right now. Got the ignition coils out, spark plugs out, disconnected all of the fuel injectors as well. So now time to use this baby. Also, in case you guys didn't know, you can go to most local auto parts stores, for instance, AutoZone or Pep Boys, and you can use their loaner tools for free. So for instance, rather than buying a compression tool, I can just go over there, leave a deposit of the price of the tool. If I want to end up keeping it, I can, but basically I just have to return it within however their set amount of days are. I think AutoZone, they do 90 days. I can keep this tool for up to 90 days, use it, and then once I take it back, they'll return me the amount that I paid for it. Very useful in case you didn't know that. So I got a little sticky note here. I'm doing the dry compression test, wet compression test. I haven't looked up what an RB20 is supposed to be because I just don't want to get disappointed off the bat. So I'm gonna do all of these ratings first and then go look up what an RB20 should be at. It's a strategy for not getting disappointed immediately. Let's go, boys. I'm gonna say 145. 144. Oh no. Fuck my ass. 125. But we'll see how it stacks up when we do the wet compression test. Oh, that's what I'm talking about, boys. About 149. 149. Oh, this is another bad one. This one is at 130. Holy shit, this is very high compression. That's insanely high. About 155. We got our first set of data over here. Concluding our dry test, definitely cylinders number 3 and number 5 are the low ones. Everything else is pretty good. And surprisingly, number 6 is very, very good. Now we're gonna do the wet test. Okay, that concluded the dry test. Now we gotta move on to the wet test. So we got this nice, cute little, look at an oil can. Picked this up from Harbor Freight for, I think, $3 and some change with coupon. So I have that oil can filled up with my oil, which I run this Purell oil. If you guys don't know, you guys should look up this oil. Very, very good oil. Highly recommend it, 10 out of 10. So I'm gonna take my little can over here and do a little spritzel ditzel inside of the cylinders for whichever one I'm testing. A few little pumps, and then I'll redo the compression test just like before, and then we'll get our wet results. Yeah. So I'm gonna take this boy.
Why don't you just pour oil into it?
Did a few little pumps, huh?
Why don't you just pour oil into it? Isn't it the same thing?
Yeah, but this is cooler. Alright, so this one was a good one, so it shouldn't even increase unless I did not put enough oil in there. About dead on 160. I'm gonna say this is about 149. 152. 143 about. 157. 153. 'Okay, now it's like 150. 160. Compression test is done. Liddy boys. Okay, so for the wet now, obviously cylinder number 1 is good. Cylinder number 2, they're both very good. So the compression seems pretty good on number 2 as well. Number 4 seems good. So now our main problems are just number 5 and 3. Number 5 definitely came up to a reasonable amount. Also, these second numbers are over here are for when I add just a little bit more oil in the cylinder and retested it. So, but anyways, so yeah, 153 and 143 are definitely a bit low, especially number 3. I just looked up what the RB20 is supposed to be at for compression and stuff. So we're gonna go ahead and do a little bit math over here with my sticky notes. Okay, so, alright. So this was our original chart over here. When I looked it up, it said standard should be about 170 PSI. Then the limit for how low it can be is 128 PSI, and then the variance between cylinders should be 14 PSI or less. Over here, I just wrote down all the highest compression values per cylinder. 160 PSI is the highest, and definitely cylinder number 3 coming in at 144 PSI is the lowest. I mean, everything else isn't even in the 140s. Okay, and the difference between 160 and 144 is 16 PSI, so greater than the limit over here. However, online, a lot of people say that the limit should be within like 10% is the limit. And of course, 144 over 160 equals 0.9, so within 90%. So there's literally a 10% variation between the highest and lowest values. So I'm gonna say that the engine is all right. And moving on from number 3, I mean, all the rest seem pretty good. And on number 3, even after adding the oil over here, it gained some compression, but not a lot. So I'm guessing the valves on cylinder number 3 are the issue. Okay, looking at all that though, overall it does seem like the engine is doing all right, so I shouldn't be like overly concerned with that. I mean, we were still getting 160 PSI on the highest cylinders, which is, in my opinion, very good for an over 20-year-old engine. Here are all the plugs, by the way. They all look pretty good. I'm just gonna re-gap them, make sure they're all gapped nicely, and then put them back in the car and reassemble everything. Oh yeah, and something super dumb is I disconnected all the fuel injectors, of course, because for some reason I thought this would be like a normal car. Then when I went inside there on my switch panel, I realized I have a separate switch just for my starter to activate. So it's not like I have to run my fuel pump or a bunch of other stuff in order to get the car to crank. I literally have a switch just for the starter. So I didn't even need to disconnect all the injectors. So dumb. Okay, about to put on the last piece, and if you look over here, the intake pipe has no oil residue on it, which is very interesting. And then if I touch the cold side of the pipe right here, also no oil residue. Very, very interesting. Things kind of escalated over here. I took off all the intercooler piping. I took off the intercooler. And the goal here is to check for oil. So if you look down over there, the inlet for the turbo is actually fairly dry. Like when I rub my hand in here, there's really not that much oil residue. There's a little bit on the outside lip over here, but it's not much. And the PCV line goes right before the inlet for the turbo, so that should be fairly oily. If it was a ton of blow-by that was causing all that oil. And then over here, after it goes to the turbo, there's a ton of oil. As you can tell, there's a whole puddle over there. The inside is, fairly oily over here. Of course, the big old puddle. So that has me believing that the turbo seal is bad, and it's not just a ton of blow-by from the engine, especially since the engine actually has pretty good compression numbers. And as far as shaft play is concerned, in my opinion, there's barely any shaft play. A little bit front to back, but not too much side to side. Also, if you want to see how much oil is in here, you can see the whole puddle of oil inside the intercooler. It's hard to tell, but in there, there's more oil in the hot side piping. Anywho, to confirm our suspicions, I'm gonna slap everything back together, try and clean out all the oil that's currently in there, and then I'm gonna go drive the car with the PCV disconnected. Okay, with all this put back together, we're gonna do a trick that my friend Riley told me to do to basically diagnose whether it's just excessive blow-by or if it's the turbo seals going bad. And a quick way he taught me how to do that is to take the PCV hose over here going back into the intake and to just dump this into a bottle. And that way I could see if there's a ton of oil gathering up inside the bottle and it's excessive blow by, or if there's still a ton of oil inside all the intake tubing and everything, then I know it's most likely the turbo going bad and I'm filling all the intercooler piping with oil because the bottle will be empty. I'm gonna take it for a test drive. For a little rip. There's nothing really in there. Interesting. Quite the adventure, but another update. I've done some further diagnosing and now here is the final verdict. Got all the intercooler piping off as well as the intake, blah, blah, blah. So for the past times of driving it, I haven't had the PCV hooked up and connected back to the inlet of the turbo, so it shouldn't be getting any oil from blow-by. And I also cleaned out the 2 hot pipes so that there wasn't really any oil in them. Yeah, it's a little bit hard to see, but you can tell that there's like a drop of oil right there. There's some oil inside that lip. And there's definitely some oil inside here if you touch with your finger. And additionally, and of course there's oil from the outlet of the turbo. It's really hard to see. And originally when I was testing for shaft play on the turbo, I thought it was all right. And that's because I was forgetting which type of play was bad to have. So obviously front to back play is the worst type of play that you can have in a turbo. And that one definitely has front to back play. And I'm not saying a significant amount, but it definitely more than there should be. In conclusion, all the oil is coming from the turbo seals caused by all the shaft play. Which means I will either be taking out the turbo and swapping it out with another one, or taking out the turbo and then rebuilding it. Although for time being, I'm still gonna put everything back together and then drive it as is. It's not really a big deal to me. So with the combo of a catch can as well as the turbo fix, we should be looking pretty good. And of course the compression is good on the engine as well. So that was the most important part about doing this entire process. So that's it for now. I'm gonna put the car back together and then we're gonna go take it to a undisclosed location and do some testing with it. So make sure you're subscribed to keep updated on all that. And if you are already subscribed, make sure to have notifications on. Other than that, follow me on Instagram, offbeat_garage, and then check out the store, offbeatgarage.com. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.